Hi, folks. My name is Brandon Peel, and I'm the author of Purpose Work Nation, this book here. And after it came out, a lot of folks said, Peel, when are you going to do the audiobook? And I did an audiobook in 2018 for Planet on Purpose, and it was grueling, meaning it was one of the least fun things I've ever done. I don't want to do it again because it's laborious, it's not super fun, and I thought that it might be more fun to actually just read the book on video because that would allow me to pause and maybe expand on a few points. And of course, if you want to listen to this as an audiobook, you just simply listen to this without the video or put it on the background. Uh, Now, just know that I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to mispronounce a word or two. So no, this is not going to be like a fully professionally produced audiobook, but it will be more conversational and hopefully something that will bring the ideas alive a little bit better than simply just hearing my voice on an audible file. The other reason I'm doing this is because I want this to be widely accessible. I really don't want only people who have this type of audiobook account like Audible or something like that. And so we're making this available to everyone, which of course means I don't charge for it. But if you want to support our work, you're more than welcome to do that. You can buy the book, buy the ebook, and if you work for an organization, you can hire my company, Unity Lab, to activate purpose and belonging. So, as some of you know, this book kind of has three main points. And I'm going to read the whole book, but I just want to give you a quick summary. So the first is that business is the front line of national renewal. Now, not many folks are talking this way because all the attention's on DC, like, oh, why can't we get this done? And why does everything die in the Senate? And why is the Supreme Court doing its thing? And that's because many of us still think that government is where the change can happen. And unfortunately, that's actually no longer the case. 2014 study out of Princeton revealed that we are effectively an oligarchy or a corporatocracy or an aristocracy. The will of the people is no longer resented. Other studies have come out about the efficacy of protests. So all of the things that we would need to have a fully functioning democracy really aren't there. And the numbers reflect that. So less than a quarter of us trust the government, and that's down from 68% in I think it's down from 77% in like the 1960s. So we don't trust the government. 70% of us believe the government only serves the interests of business and the wealthy. So we're starting to come into the realization that business is kind of the last person standing, really. And religion and education and journalism have also been on a multi-decade long slide. So all the sectors that are supposed to keep this place functioning aren't. And what we've witnessed over the last few decades is that business has basically taken over the nation. And I know most of us don't want it that way, including myself, but that's really what's so. The other piece is that business is where we spend our time. So the average person is spending 2,000 hours a year at work. And a lot of organizations have become essentially sovereign entities, meaning they've got their own healthcare function, education function, their own environmental functions, their own public policy functions. So they're actively lobbying in DC. So if business is not on board, or at least part of the solution to make this nation work, we don't have a chance. We just don't. And as we'll start to see, we're moving towards a civil war, what many call the Cold Civil War. It's already turned hot in lots of places, like Uvalde, El Paso, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Orlando, and obviously Washington, D.C. So if we have any chance of saving this republic, the private sector has to play a leadership role. And to that end, like I wrote this book for leaders, specifically leaders who like the idea of a democracy, even though the data says we basically don't have one anymore. So leaders who care about the United States of America, care about democracy, this book is for you, or people who aspire to be leaders. The second point of the book is that what's driven the nation to this place is this hyper individualism, meaning we don't believe we're connected to anything. We try to get ours and externalize all the costs and the risks and the liability onto other folks, which is perfectly represented by our national bird, the bald eagle, which is a solitary raptor that swoops down to take, steal, exploit, and retreat without any concern for the consequences of its actions. Now, contrasting that with our national mammal, the bison. As you can see, it's all over the book's cover. It's all over all of my websites. BrandonPeele.com, UnityLab.com, PurposeWork.us. And that's because the bison is our national mammal, and it comes with a set of ethics that are much more, but much better match for our actual stated purpose as a nation. So we need to activate these ethics of the bison in-house in our organizations and have that ripple out into our families and communities and hopefully our other sectors of society. The third point is that businesses have everything they need right now to do this, to activate purpose, belonging, empathy, mutual concern in-house with social learning approaches, which I'll explain more over the course of this book. And that they actually are going to have a really hard time putting pressure on public institutions, on the rest of society, if they don't actually embody democratic ideals internally, or the ethics of the bison internally. So that's what we're going to do today. The book starts out with a review from the Midwest Book Review. That's all online. A bunch of recommendations. That's all online. You can find that at purposework.us. And then acknowledgments and gratitude, which I'm not going to read here today. I might read at the end because I want to take you right into the content here. So to that end, let's get going. I'm going to read the very first piece of the book, which are the author's notes. And the author's notes are basically the context, like why I wrote this book, what's important to know about this book before reading it or engaging with it. Here we go. Author's note number 1, why I wrote this book. In February of 2012, I completed my initial purpose discovery journey and left my career in Silicon Valley and began to live a markedly different life, one driven and enchanted by my purpose. Now, I define purpose as a transcendent identity, beyond the concerns for self and family, and that it includes many aspects, such as one's vision for the world, our mission, craft, and our most cherished values or virtues. And in the years since, understanding my purpose has led me to write books to guide others on their purpose journey, help build a global community of purpose practitioners, the global purpose leaders, travel internationally giving keynotes, and delivering purpose programs for organizations like LinkedIn, Stanford, the United States Marine Corps. And at the time, I felt like I was living proof of the power of purpose. I had romance, I had impact, success, and a deep sense of fulfillment. Now, in spite of all this, a persistent, unanswered question has remained in my heart. Where is home? I thought my soul should have the answer to that. I've been in regular dialogue with my soul about how to live and how to serve, and it's typically quite generous with guidance. But on this question, it was curiously quiet. And as a result, I felt unsettled, never fully at home or at peace. At the end of 2012, I had just moved to Berkeley, California, a town where I knew virtually no one, and so the question loomed even larger. Where is my soil? Who are my people? I'm from Illinois, and I've lived in Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, but none of these places felt like home. And here I was again, starting over in a new town, feeling unrooted and disconnected. In retrospect, I was encountering the collective aspects of purpose. Because purpose isn't just about me and my gifts, and you and your gifts, but it also shows up in how I relate to my family and my community and my soil. Soul and soil share a etymological root in the way that human, humane, and humus do, as well as natal, nation, and nature do. To be human is to be ensouled, to be born of the earth, of the humus, and belong to the living soil. And yet, I was a human without soil, an air plant of sorts. Somehow, I miraculously pulled in all the nutrients from the air and the sun, but I was alone and longing for the nutrition that only a sense of shared history and belonging can provide. To inhabit one's soul, or one's purpose, is to inhabit one's place on the planet, and one's place in community, in society, and economy, in the way that other species inhabit an ecological niche, thriving in certain climates and altitudes and perishing in others. Humans also have conditions necessary for thriving. In this way, to be human and not feel at home is disturbing and unsettling. Indigenous tribes such as the Maori and the Diné, what we may know as the Navajo, bury their placenta ceremonially to mark this sacred connection. And there are people in Mexico whose phrase for "where are you from" literally translates to "where is your placenta buried?" Similarly, the Welsh offer a word that illuminated the uneasiness I felt in not feeling at home. Hiraeth, a spiritual longing tinged with soulful grief, an unspecified homesickness, a nostalgia for ancient times and places which we can never return. Perhaps these are times and places that never were. In retrospect, my homesickness was for true belonging, a sense that everyone in my community has dignity, that our unique gifts matter and are celebrated. This was something that my Midwestern upbringing never fully delivered. Growing up white and in the suburbs, I had what many might describe as a rich community with family, nature, sports, and school. However, it felt bland and simulated, like everyone was pretending to be happy, like they had made it, and that this was the best of all possible worlds. But something really important was missing. I couldn't name it then. At first, I tried to distract myself with the question of home, with my work, with dating and hiking and festivals. I thought I would eventually learn to love living in the Bay Area, and believed it would be where I would put down roots and build a community where I truly belonged. In 2016, Stephanie, my then girlfriend and now wife, and I received some upsetting news. Our friends were leaving the Bay. They had little ones and elected to move closer to nature and family. As a majority of our work could be done virtually and a good portion of our community had flown the coop, we found ourselves asking the question together: where is home? We wanted a place where we could put down roots. We wanted a place where Steph could be warm and surf. We wanted a place that felt real, connected, permanent, and less of a bubble of inequality, disconnection, and transience. We considered the Southeast, Southern California, Spain, and Central America. When I sat with the option of leaving the United States, I just couldn't picture myself doing it. For all of our nation's problems, and as much as I like sangria in a Spanish plaza and fish tacos on a Baja beach, I couldn't leave. There is something of my soul in this soil. Midwestern lakes, corn festivals, street fairs, baseball, barbecue, the blues, Jeeps, Yosemite, the Grand Canyon. Each has claimed a piece of my soul. This much I knew. However, it seemed like at least once a week I learned something about how my home was falling apart. As it turns out, most of our national family is struggling. 97% of us live unhealthy lifestyles. 84% of us are experiencing higher levels of stress. 61% of us are lonely. 50% of us are disengaged or actively undermining our employer. And 49% of us do not make a living wage. Now, I think that number's actually jumped above 50% since I wrote this, so we're not doing good. And it's even worse for people of color. For example, black families have 1 cent of wealth for every dollar of wealth that a white family has. And we're not just sad and lonely and broke, but increasingly finding ourselves at odds with each other. We have tensions between conservatives and liberals, boomers, millennials, white and BIPOC folks, LGBTQIA+, and cisgender heterosexuals, employees and employers, rural and urban folks, and the list goes on and on. And it points to a clear lack of integrity. Because our nation's purpose, all are created equal, e pluribus unum, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and to form a more perfect union, that purpose is increasingly not the reality for the people who call this place home. We are not free. We are not equal, healthy, happy, or connected. And we're pissed. Rightfully so. 1 in 3 of us believe violence may be necessary to achieve our political goals. And beyond being pissed about our politics and differences, we're pissed at the system. We're pissed at the lie. We were all sold the lie, the so-called American dream, that in the United States, with hard work, anybody can carve out a middle-class life with comfort, security, and belonging. And with income mobility at historic lows, each day more of us are waking up to the fact that even if we become wealthy, it typically means more rooms and high fences, rather than longer tables, deeper connection, and greater fulfillment. In light of this, how could I leave? How could I jump ship? Now, the words that I initially wrote here in this part, I was asked not to include, but I'm going to include them here because I think it might strike a chord with a bunch of folks. On some level, leaving is cowardly because we've benefited from this nation, all the privileges, all the wealth, all the institutions, and when things get slightly uncomfortable, or we don't like it that there's white supremacists doing something, or that the government doesn't work, like, okay, I'm going to go to Portugal or Costa Rica or New Zealand. And for me personally, that feels cowardly. And my invitation to you, if you're thinking about that, like, is that really who you are? Because I don't think so. You know, from Superman, like, to whom much is given, much is expected, right? So we've been given a lot, and now it's our time to step up. So our shared purpose means something to me, and it enrages me that we're not living it when I know it's possible. I knew I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I jumped ship, so Steph and I decided to stay and also to experiment with living in a new part of California. After we married in the summer of 2018, we moved to San Diego, a diverse but very segregated second-tier purple city. So that means about equal parts liberal conservative. Steph could be warm and close to the beach, and we'd have our chance of building a life and community in a place with unspeakable natural beauty and rich diversity. We moved to a working class neighborhood near the ocean. enjoyed the beach, margaritas, hiking, and burritos. As I started to connect with my neighbors, I saw good people working their butts off just about every damn minute of the week. One neighbor drove a cab at all hours and struggled to fit in an hour or two to kick the soccer ball around with his sons in the alley. Another couple, working as a landscaper and a hairstylist, fled for more house and cheaper rent in the Midwest and after they had a child. Another had worked at Home Depot for 5 years and still made $12 an hour. When I was interviewing cleaning services, I asked how much the cleaners were paid, and rarely did they say more than $15 an hour. I talked with unhomed folks, many who were veterans, many with mental illnesses and addictions to meth or fentanyl. They wanted to work, but they had trouble keeping a job. My heart broke. Almost everyone was living hand to mouth. The living wage required to support a family here in San Diego, a family of 4, is $40 an hour. Yet few jobs paid more than $15. This meant that most households had extended families living together and multiple incomes. For those who weren't part of a solid family, there was the street, with plenty of cheap crack and meth and fentanyl and OxyContin, and of course warm weather. San Diego was brimming with folks who had opted out of the struggle, out of this subsistence wage cycle. Although we certainly had plenty of inequality and poverty in the Bay, it hit me differently in San Diego. Perhaps I had become more open to our nation's pain. Perhaps taking in a new city allowed me to see more deeply what was actually going on. It's hard to say, but the effect was shame and betrayal. Each struggling parent and each street kid felt to me like a personal failure. San Diego gave me a unique view into our hourglass-shaped economy, with my San Francisco and New York friends making $200,000 plus a year and posting pictures of themselves in Vail and Bali, and my San Diego community just scraping by and barbecuing in the park on their one day off. How could I call myself a citizen and be okay with this? I certainly couldn't ignore it, so I let it in. Throughout 2019, our collective suffering began to teach me. It showed me how the vast majority of us, even the wealthy ones, were living lives of quiet desperation. It showed me that I was not alone in feeling betrayed by our nation's promise, or really the nation's fulfillment of the promise. As 2020 began, I thought I was through the worst of my heartbreak. After all, I was working with great clients, building cultures of belonging and purpose. I loved working with my colleagues, giving keynotes and mixing it up at conferences and karaoke bars, street fairs and festivals. And Steph and I found an awesome home in a diverse and walkable neighborhood and started building our community. Ha! Enter COVID-19. Like many folks, we masked up and sequestered and helped keep our local businesses alive. With in-person outlets closed down, all of my attention poured into our nation's crisis of soul. For me, and I reckon for many of you, early 2020 was a cascade of soul-piercing heartbreaks. A chaotic pandemic response and our political dysfunction revealed how much hatred was in our house. We were falling apart. My family and friends either avoided the topics of politics or avoided each other. When we did engage, we talked past one another, each of us inhabiting wildly different worlds, each with different facts, beliefs, conclusions, and visions for the path forward. And if that wasn't enough, on Tuesday, May 26, 2020, I watched the last 8 minutes and 46 seconds of George Floyd's life. I spent the next couple of days horizontal on the couch in disbelief. That one, right back there. It felt like 1995, the year that my brother Carson died in a car accident. I remember asking myself multiple times a day, did that really happen? Is he really gone? Is this real? Am I awake? George's death hit me in a similar fashion. Did I just witness a white man calmly kill a black man? When a grown man calls out for his dead mother, does that not signal something is wrong? Did his body going limp not suggest he should stop? Did seeing him evacuate his bowels not signal a change to the restraint? Seriously. Derek Chauvin's facial expression is stamped on my heart. When we lived in the Bay Area, my wife and I were frequent protesters. We were well read about our nation's original sins, native genocide and slavery, our ongoing apartheid, and the mechanics of systemic racism. We had engaged in inclusion and diversity trainings, so we knew that this murder wasn't a one-off, but on a long list of unarmed BIPOC folks murdered by police, like Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor. I don't know if Trayvon was murdered by George Zimmerman, who was pretending he was a policeman, but what was new to me was the look on Derek's face. Its unflinching, steady commitment to murder. His face is white and middle-aged, just like mine. It's the face of a man who likely believed he was serving the common good, just like me. How many times did I harden my heart and turned away from the suffering of my black, Hispanic, indigenous, and Asian friends? How many times did I walk past an unhomed person without acknowledging them or offering help? How many times did I tolerate racism, sexism, and homophobia? How many times did I join in by telling jokes and poking fun? How many times did I let the love drain from my face while I justified the suffering of others as natural, normal, and just the way things are? And then it hit me. Now I know why I don't feel at home in the United States and why I cannot live in another country. The fulfillment of our purpose has become my responsibility. Now, I wasn't elected by anyone, but summoned from within. I can't just take the blue pill and put blinders on and try to live a cloistered life of comfort, whether in Illinois or New York or California. I can't feel at home or at peace when dehumanization is happening in any room in my house. I can't feel at home in a nation with so much unacknowledged and unhealed trauma. I can't feel at home in a place that calls us to kill, oppress, exploit, and rape, and then forget any of it happened, and that it continues to happen. I can't feel fully at home until we activate our purpose, heal our wounds, and prevent further harm. So that's the end of author's note number 1. Stay tuned, more to come. Thanks for listening. Of course, you can find out more at purposework.us.